Hello and welcome to another episode of the midierror Meets podcast, where we speak to a wide range of people from the music world. On the show this time, we've actually got CJ Bolland. I don't know how that happened, but yes, we're speaking to CJ Bolland, techno producer, remixer, and DJ, known for his seminal tracks on R&S Records, his remixes of things like Prodigy No Good, he's remixed for New Order, he's remixed for Depeche Mode, and he's still making music today, and he is literally one of my all-time heroes. You can now support the podcast in a few ways. If you don't want to donate money, I do make Max for Live devices, and I also sell like musical hardware, MIDI stuff. So if you don't want to donate, you can buy something that I make, or just simply like and share it and do all that rubbish. Anyway, let's get on with the show. And the first question I asked CJ was about his musical beginnings.
Well, a vivid one is the Doctor Who theme on telly. Literally, when I think I was about two years old, and every time it used to come on, I just used to bounce up and down on the settee until the program started, and then it scared the shit out of me, and I used to hide behind the settee. My mum noticed the reaction to the theme tune, and she bought me the 7-inch. So. And it was just, I don't know, something about the sound, about the compression on the analog synth sound that just, I don't know, it just spoke to me instantly. And then after that, it was the very next thing would have been Jean-Michel Jarre, seeing him on television with his new single, Oxygen. And again, mum went to the record store, got me the album. So she said, well, this kid seems to like this instrumental bollocks. And then
That's incredible, man. Yeah, two seminal sort of synth works there. The Doctor Who theme was really like ominous, wasn't it? Really dark and weird.
Yeah, but lovely. You know, just really, really catchy. I mean, still it's, I mean, the first 2 seconds of it, everybody knows Doctor Who theme. There you go. It's instantly recognizable. And it's just sound of it's awesome.
Absolutely. And Jean-Michel Jarre, like one of the pioneers of electronic music.
Well, totally. I mean, again, seeing that on TV. I mean, seeing anything on TV in 1974 was already was spectacular. But this guy had a big Moog modular synth and an ARP 2500 modular synth and all this. And I mean, I'd never even seen an organ before, so it's like, you know, what's this all about? And then, he obviously, it was his video, so he wasn't actually playing it live, but he was supposedly playing it live. So you'd see all these lights flashing, the VU meters banging backwards and forwards, and these amazing sounds coming. So I was instantly just hooked on this kind of vibe, this kind of sound. Not that was the only thing going on, because Mum and Dad were big rock fans and stuff, so there was always some Beatles or Rolling Stones or the Shadows. There was always some music on. There was always music. That was always definite, but there was all kinds of genres and vibes and styles. But I just had this pre-love for, well, you know, the dark electronic stuff.
Excellent. Yeah. And where did that go from Jean-Michel Jarre and the Who?
Well, basically, apart from personally trying to make stuff like that as well, but firstly with literally with toys, with like little organs, little Casio things, or even before the Casios, Bon Tempi's little wind organ things. I don't know if you remember those.
I do, yeah. I used to have one, yeah.
Well, exactly. We all did, I think, at some point.
Yeah, everyone's got to have one at one time.
I used to race home from school just to start fucking playing little melodies on it. And then it would progress. And then my nana, one of my grandmothers, my mum's mum, is actually Belgian. That's why I actually leave, because all the rest of the family's British. I was also born in the UK. I didn't move to Belgium until I was 3. Raised in English, as you can tell, but schooled in Dutch. But my grandma on my mum's side was Belgian, and she lived nearby, and she had an organ with 2 keyboards. and you could change the sound. I mean, like, it was like 5 or 6 silly presets on it, like an organ, cello, whatever, and it sounded nothing like what it said it was going to sound like, but still it sounds, and 2 keyboards to play with. So that was the next step, and then that's it. It just progressed, and then I got my first synth when I was about 11 or 12. Well, my hands on that first. It wasn't mine. It was a friend of mine's who was a couple of years older than me. He was like 13 or 14, and he was into this kind of thing as well. And he had this thing called the Yen Essex 1000, which is a very basic old analog synth, a bit like an MS-20, a bit like a Korg MS. I don't know if I'm talking synth stuff, so I don't know if you know. I don't know how much you know about synth.
I'm pretty synth savvy, I'd say.
All right, fair enough. Yeah. So basically, it's a bit like an MS-20, but without any patch possibilities. There's no in and out except an audio out. There's no MIDI. There's nothing else. But it does generate these typical analog sounds with an ADSS and a cutoff and a resonance and all that stuff. So that was the next level again, stuff to tweak with. But how are these guys? You can't play it all with just like your 2 hands. I mean, I need to record. I've kind of record multi-track. Then I had a cassette player that had a microphone input on it. So I could record through the microphone input, and then I could play that tape back on a different cassette player, and then play that back into the microphone and play something on top. So you can imagine after about 5 goes of that, I had a multi-track going on, but it was like 98% hiss and 2% of what I was actually playing. The quality deteriorated as we did more layers. And then I was like, well, surely you don't have to play it all. How do these guys, a sequencer, how does that work then? So then, we got my hands on my first sequencer, which was an SQ10 from Korg, which are just literally, a very basic old analog sequencer. And then things just went from there. Then my first sampler, which was an Ensoniq Mirage, which was an old 8-bit sampler, and also had a sequencer, an unquantizable 333 event G sequencer, but it did what I wanted. It sequenced, and it was brilliant, just brilliant. So I can go on like this for hours, by the way. Just tell me.
That's great, man. No, I'm really into the gear, and I'm definitely into talking about the 90s sort of gear with you.
I'm nowhere near there. I'm still in the 80s now.
Okay, that's cool. But yeah, the SQ10s, yeah, that's definitely known to me. The sequencer, just like analog steps, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it 16 step or 8 step?
It's 12, actually, would you believe, which is totally weird. Exactly. Oh, yeah, and then we got the MS-20 to go with it, and then I got an MS-10 to go with it, and then, things just were building on, and then we got our first drum machine, which was the very first one, was a TR-606.
Oh, nice.
Very basic. And then the next set of problems came about, which was basically, hang on, that 606 can sequence itself, and we've got that SQ10, but how do we sync them together? Because that hasn't got a MIDI DIN sync, that hasn't got a DIN sync on it, that's got a different type of CV gate, and then this kind of bollock started happening. So we had to start finding ways to sync stuff together, and it was just a nightmare, but really good fun.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a bit of a wild west in the early days, wasn't it, in terms of synchronizing gear? Because you had the DIN sync.
Sometimes
CV.
It wasn't even possible. So sometimes we just literally like beat mix, like we do when we DJing, just literally can't try and keep it together by tweaking the tempos up and down, and just record, and as soon as it missed, cut that bit of tape out and then replace it with a bit that was in sync. Stuff like that. That's how nuts it was. I mean, if you imagine that now with all the software and all the hard disk space in the world that you could possibly need, imagine the stuff we went through back then. It was just, but there was never so much fun had as like being in a. I mean, now I'm talking already in the 90s when I was in the studio with a reel-to-reel tape machine. There's no more fun to be had than recording 30 minutes of jam sort of sequences, running along and tweaking it and chucking effects on and off and muting things in and out, and then cutting the tape down to 5 minutes to cut it down to an actual arranged track. That's just the best fun in the world. It took ages, but really good fun.
Yeah, I do have like a sentimental connection to those processes, and the idea of really crafting something physically, like there's something to be said for doing that, I think.
Well, it's just a whole different approach. I mean, back then there wasn't any other way to do it, so you just had to do what you did. I mean, often now you think back about it and you think, oh, I'd love to work like that again, but you never will, because it takes so much bloody time to do. I mean, you're not gonna, I can edit this in Cubase or in Pro Tools or in Ableton, whatever, in like 2 seconds, or I can get my tape machine out and spend 4 hours cutting it up. So yeah, but it's just, once you've been there, it's a way of thinking about how arrangement works as well.
Definitely.
If you're not used to having to go through all that process, you have a different vision of how to arrange things. And I always liked approaching it from like that live, just having fun with it, feeling it on the fly, as live bands do when they're playing live together, when they're jamming together, going with the vibe on the fly, and then cutting down all the best bits, as opposed to thinking what should happen next, just really feeling what should happen next. I mean, you do a bit of both in both circumstances, I know, but it's just a very natural way of doing it when you have to do it live. Basically, you have to record it all as it's happening, otherwise you don't get the result that you need.
Definitely, and I'd love to speak to you about that process of making techno tracks live on a desk. What would be your setup in that situation? Like, how would that?
Well, as many drum machines as we could find, which would be the 808, the 909, the 606. When we were in the RNS studio, of course, we were spoiled rotten for things like that, because we had the whole Roland series. We had a whole range of other drum machines as well, and even means to sync them all up somehow with like KMS 30s and things, whatever, MIDI to CV gate and MIDI to DIN sync converters and all that. So, but what would generally be on the go would at least be a 909, an 808, usually at some point a 303, and then in the early days in the studio we had an Atari, of course.
Nice. Which
had the first version of Cubase on it, which wasn't even called Cubase, it was called Pro 24.
Wow.
And it was horrible. It was a nightmare. It didn't even have it didn't have an arrangement window. It was literally just like blocks of, it was static. There was nothing moving on the screen, if you see what I mean. So it was the very first one. So, but then came Cubase 1.0, and then we had the the arrangement window. It was only MIDI, of course, no audio recordable, but it was at least gave you some control, and you could see where your arrangement was going. You could see, oh, that's the string, that's the bass line, that's that. Oh, I want that there, I want that there. You could see it basically. It was the first time we had a visual of your arrangement, which was a brilliant new tool. Sight, we can see what we're doing.
I can see that.
So that was good.
Yeah. So the Pro 20
that was good, and then
go on.
I was going to say we used to combine those two because sequencing on the Atari was new, and it was also limited because the machine itself didn't have much power. It was like 1 megabyte or something. I had to play with. Even though it was only MIDI, it still filled up pretty quickly and said, "I'm stuck here. I haven't got any more juice." So we used to combine as much as we could the MIDI arrangement and still jam along with that, if you see what I mean. So we'd have as little as possible coming out of the Atari, try and use as many separate sequences for analog sequences as we had. And then the Atari only for things that we really needed it for, is not to overload its puny little processor.
That's amazing, man. I love the idea that you were like overloading the MIDI buffer on the Atari ST. That's brilliant.
Very quickly as well, yeah.
Nice. I think a lot of people swore by the ST, didn't they, for like timing clock?
Oh, it was brilliant. Yeah. I mean, there's still nothing beats it like a proper good analog sequencer like that's like tight, totally tight. But I mean, that's nitpicking, isn't it, nowadays? Like I said, it was really nice to have very tight hardware, but it's also really nice to have a laptop that's got like 19 studios in it all in one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you compare nowadays to back then, I don't think I'd swap right away again. I'm quite happy with that right now.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I do remember randomly picking up a sampler off someone in the early 2000s, and it turned out to be K-Class's studio.
All right, which sampler was that?
Oh, it was the S3200. Actually, it was two. It was the S3200 and the CD3000i, I think it was. Right. So yeah, but I remember going to their studio and just being wowed by all the synths and all the gear. But and then also, even in 2000, early 2000, they still had the Atari ST to run the show. Like,
I've still got one. I don't use it anymore, but I've still got one. Still got it.
As you mentioned there, you had access to the RNS studio, and you released loads of seminal tracks for them.
Cheers.
What was it like working for RNS? So yeah, I guess what was that studio like, and what was it like
Oh,
working with
man.
RNS?
Well, firstly, there was several along the way because I was at RNS from like 89, I think it was, till about 95. So over the 6 years, there was 3 different studios. I mean, built around the same gear, but it moved around and gear got added and stuff. And the very first one, where I actually met Cisco Ferreira, the very first day I walked in, he was sat there. He was about, I think I was 17 and he was 18.
Nice.
And we were just, and Renat introduced me. I literally the first day I'd met Renat as well. I went to see Renat and to talk because he'd called me because he'd heard a cassette tape of mine on some pirate radio station of some tracks that I'd made. And he said, "Oh, can we have a chat? Do you fancy coming down to the studio?" I was like, "Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, I think I'll do that." And we had this little chat. And then he said, "I'll take you to the studio." Introduced me to Cisco, and he said, "All right, why don't you guys get acquainted and give me a call, and I'll come back and see you later." And I think it was 2:00 in the afternoon on a Saturday, and we called him Sunday evening. We just didn't stop. We just started chatting and then started tweaking. But just the machines. I mean, I've never seen machines like this. I've heard of some of them. He had an emulator sampler, an emulator 3, which I knew Depeche Mode had. And I was like, oh my God, this machine, I mean, costs more than a house. And it's like, what the hell? I can touch it. You know, I mean, I'm actually allowed to press the buttons on it. Oh my God. So yeah, I just didn't want to leave. I was hooked immediately, and Cisco was obviously sound blog, so we kicked it off immediately, and we just sat there all night and had a lot of fun. And then Renat came back the next day. He said, "Well, did you have fun?" I said, "Yeah, we did." He said, "Do you want to stay?" I said, "Yes, please." And then he signed me up, and that was it. And oh man, I mean, just that, literally, my jaw hit the floor that first day when I walked in and I saw all that gear. I mean, a mixing desk for a start. He had this big 32 channel mixing desk. I'd never seen anything like that before, you know. And like I said, all the drum machines you could imagine, and then especially this emulator 3, that was a big deal for me because I mean I was really into things like the Art of Noise, and I'd seen them and like Herbie Hancock with his Fairlight and stuff like that. And I really loved what they were doing with this creative way of sampling and how you could make completely new sounds by jamming 2 bricks together or something or whatever, or opening a can of Coke and seeing how that sounds and then playing with it, all those kind of things. But then with an emulator, not only could you sample, but you had like analog filters on a sampler, which even nowadays is almost like, well, ridiculous and cool.
Yeah,
but that was in the 80s. Yeah, but that's why the thing cost more than a truck. You know what I mean? It was expensive. Yeah, so yeah. We had a secret weapon that like other studios didn't have. Most studios had an Akai S1000 back then, or a 900 even, which was a cool machine and a very good sampler, but it had none of that fancy stuff, like the filters and the velocity to sample start functions and little things like that used to, you know, I mean, just do really cool things for me.
Yeah, that is a good feat. That is a good function, isn't it? When you can set.
Oh man, I had so much fun with it.
Because I think that's one thing. Go on.
I would just say I would sample like a minute of me twiddling and tweaking on a Moog. That'd be like a memory Moog, and I just literally press a key for a minute and tweak every knob I could tweak on it, and then play that whole sample back in with a MIDI sequence, but with different velocities, and then that velocity to sample start setting, and you would just create it just got weird, and it was lovely.
That was
so yeah.
Because I think I've always appreciated that in your work when listening back. You could just hear the automation happening sort of from a geeky point of view, just be like, wow, there's so much stuff happening within those. There's so many like little details in what you're doing.
Well, it is geeky and it is nerdy. That's the thing. But I just used to love crawling into those machines and just making them do exactly what I wanted them to do.
Yeah.
And basically overproducing lots of times and being too perfectionist about it, and sometimes killing it and sometimes ruining it. And you know what I mean? But it's just the way I've always enjoyed doing it, and sometimes it's worked well, but sometimes it hasn't.
Yeah, but I'm definitely saying it in a way of like you almost were able to make the synth sort of organic in a way. You know, they sort of lived and breathed in your tracks much more to me than like a lot of electronic music that was out then. You know.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
It's all just gut feeling, basically. There's no more I can say than that. It's just literally what felt right at the time. Is just what you do.
That's incredible, man. And so, yeah, Cisco you worked with on, was it a couple of albums? How many albums did you work with him?
Well, we sort of worked on and off together because basically at that moment in time, we were the only two people who really knew how to work that studio. So when other people would come in, we'd be engineering for them as well. Like Dave Clark would come in as a young kid, and then we'd do some engineering for Dave Clark. Joey Beltram came in, and we'd be producing Dave Angel and all these people. I mean, all those people were coming in, and eventually then Cisco left. Cisco went somewhere else, and eventually it was just me doing all those other jobs for other people as well, because they would come in and they would say, well, I'll do it all myself. But then they'd see the studio, they'd be like, oh, how do you work an emulator? How do you work how do you work that Moog? Well, that's all right, I'll stick around then. And we just end up hanging out and just doing it all together. So that's how I got to know all these guys as well, really well in the beginning. That was good fun.
That's incredible, man.
Everybody just about some moment in time must have been in that studio. I mean, everybody from like Jeff Mills to Juan Atkins to, well, literally, like I said, Dave Clark, Laurent Garnier, Prodigy guy, everybody at some point popped in, Moby, Aphex. At some point, somebody, almost anybody that was anybody had something to do with RNS or was around just to hang out or whatever.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that studio, man. Must have been absolutely incredible. All seminal producers.
Then he moved the studio. He bought a grotty old house, but in a very cool location, which was like this was in Ghent. This is a little small city in Belgium called Ghent. And there's a river that goes through Ghent called the Leie. And the Leie at a certain point splits in half, and then splits into two rivers for about a mile, and then comes together again. And he bought this house right in the middle of the split, so it was on a little island, literally on a little island between these two rivers. So he called it, of course, Techno Island. But the house was, it was a dump basically in the beginning, but it had a studio in it with an emulator, so who cares? But I literally lived there. So I just lived in that studio. But like I said, the rest of the house, I think there was mushrooms growing out of the wall. It was horrible. It really needed renovating. But that one room with all the gear in it, nice and warm, and I think I spent about 4 years in that room.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So I only used to come out to go and get pizzas or to go to the nightclub and DJ or whatever, man.
And how did you find that? Like, do you have a particular, like, where are you sort of most comfortable? Do you like being in the studio? Or I guess a better question is, like, do you enjoy DJing live? Do you like playing your stuff live?
It's not. Well, actually, the first question is a good question because I enjoy both. I really enjoy DJing. I enjoy playing live. I enjoy all those things, but I am more comfortable in the studio. I'm not a natural stage person. I am naturally actually quite shy, and I always think, oh God, I hope I'm doing the right thing. It's just this what they want to hear. Oh shit, like this. And yet the whole time I'm banging it out, and it's fucking dance floor's going mental, and I'm sitting there having a panic attack for 2 hours. And then when it's over, I think, God, that was brilliant. Is it over already? It's like every time. I mean, I'm dreading going on stage 10 minutes before anything, even for a DJ gig, for a live show. Live shows are even worse. I get even more nervous. But and then. Once I'm on there, once I'm playing, I'm not nervous. I'm having a good time, but I'm questioning it the whole time. Whether is this really what they want? Is this, I'm always just too concerned about it. And then when it's finished, and I look back at it, I think, oh, what the hell was I worried about? It was brilliant.
And everyone's going nuts. Everyone's really sweaty, telling you the best DJ in the world.
But also being very conscious about having all eyes on you as well, and not being like, I mean, I've always enjoyed dancing in nightclubs as well, but I've always been shy about that as well. Always found a dark little corner to dance in as opposed to under the big spotlight. You know what I mean? So it's weird for me to have had a stage career at whereas actually I would naturally veer away from it, and also I have a fear of flying. So imagine that. I had to fly all over the planet, not being happy on an airplane, and then being nervous about getting on stage. So that's how my weekends have been for the last 30 years.
Wow, man! And when you say fear of flying, like what sort of level are you at?
Oh well, I do. I get on, obviously, so I get on the airplanes, and it's basically turbulence. It's that when it gets bumpy. I didn't used to when I was young. I didn't, but I think I started getting worse the first time I flew to Australia in 91 or 92, and I think it was the first time I'd been outside of Europe, and also the first time I'd been over the equator. And we flew over India and over the Bay of Bengal and the Indian Ocean during monsoon, And then we had 4 hours of severe, well, I call it severe. In my mind, it was severe. The pilot probably couldn't give a toss, but it felt like severe turbulence. And I was just bricking it for 4 hours because it was dark and all I could see was like this, well, like explosions underneath the plane, which was basically lightning. But if you've not seen lightning from above, it looks pretty frightening when it's underneath your airplane. And you can see on the little TV screen that you've still got 4 hours of ocean before you get anywhere near any land.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And it just doesn't stop bumping all the way. And even the pilot starts apologizing, and there's no more drink service or anything. And that was all the first time. And since then, I've just always been a nervous flyer. I've just always anticipated more turbulence, even, So I'm not terrible. I'm all right. I get on the planes. I do it, but I'm more comfortable on a train.
Right.
Like that.
Oh, that's cool. I guess you can get around Europe quite easily on trains. We're quite well connected.
Well, you can now because the trains are faster than the planes, but you couldn't back in the 90s. It was pretty hard. You were better off flying. But now the TGVs, the high speed trains, are brilliant.
Yeah. Well, going back to the list of people that you mentioned sort of rocked up to the R&S studio, it sort of reminds me of, a few of those artists you ended up you've remixed for. The Prodigy, No Good Start the Dance, that's when you did a museum mix of that, right?
Yeah, I did that one. Actually, the reason I called it that is because I did that in David Morley's studio. David Morley was also an R&S artist.
Right.
And he had a few hits in the beginning here. I don't know if you know the track Brazil Spectrum.
I saw it on a list today, but I didn't play it. I don't know, but I will check it out.
That was massive back then. That was a massive club hit in like 1989, 1990. But David developed diabetes very young, and he was told he had to stay away from the nightlife. He had to be in bed on time. He had to inject himself every day. And from that instant, he just flipped his career, from dance music into ambient and into strange, he just went this whole different vibe. Really cool stuff he does, by the way. But to go with that, he also started collecting old modular synths.
Wow.
And I had to do this Prodigy remix, and I called him up and I said, David, I haven't seen you for a while. How are you doing? Blah, I'm doing this remix for the Prodigy. And I know you've got some cool gear. I wouldn't mind, He said, oh yeah, come and do it here.
Wow.
And I don't know how old was I then. I think I was probably 96, 97. I don't know. So I'd been in the business myself for about 8 or 9 years. Mm-hmm. But I walked into David's studio and I didn't know what I did. Well, I didn't know anything. It was all machines I'd never seen before.
Yeah. Where's your Atari?
He didn't even have a computer. It was like old Moogs and all kinds of modular systems, Buchla and Serge and all kinds of really cool stuff that I know of now, that I've never seen in my life before then. So likewise, when people were coming to the R&S studio and I had to engineer for them, I said, David, you're going to have to engineer for me because I don't know what the hell I'm doing in this place. But I like it. So we had fun in there. So that's why that place literally was a museum. In fact, I think Kraftwerk would have been impressed by that room. So
yeah. Buchla stuff's beautiful. Just looks nice to look at, aside from what it actually does. I even saw there's a video of the Prodigy playing in Athens live.
I've seen it.
They're playing your track.
I've seen it. I know. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I actually only saw that about a year ago, so I haven't known that for a long time. I only recently discovered that myself when somebody posted it on Facebook. I'm honored. I'm honored to be. Well, I think that's very cool. That does kind of point out that there was sort of playback in a bit because I never sent them the parts to it, but cool. I was really honored that they would consider that.
Well, I was thinking that it had been remade for the Roland W30. I think that's what Liam Howlett used. Maybe it was later. Maybe it was a bit later than that. But that's amazing. I've never seen the Prodigy playing live and they're not playing a Prodigy track before.
Yeah. Well, technically it is a Prodigy track, but it's their song. It's just my version of that song.
Yeah, and it's seriously going off. It's
it's a good little clip there. Yeah.
Amazing, man. And then you also Lush for Orbital remixed, Tori Amos, Utah Saints, Wizards of the Sonic. I didn't know you'd done a remix of this until very recently, man.
I don't even remember that. Who's that again?
Wizards of the Sonic. Oh, it was
Westbound.
Westbound. That's it. Westbound versus Red Theory.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There was,
In all honesty, I can't remember half of them because I did do a lot of remixes at a certain point. I mean, you mentioned some of the more famous bands, but I did a lot. I really did a lot. I can't remember most of, well, a lot of them I can't remember. I can't remember some of the tracks I put out because I used a lot of pseudonyms as well. I can't remember some of them, my own stuff. So yeah, it's always really exciting when somebody posts something and they go, "Hang on, is that me?" Oh fuck yeah, it is me. Yeah. And I literally can't remember the tune, but then when I hear it, it all comes back.
Yeah, I mean that list really did go on with more sort of massive artists like Depeche Mode. You did a James Bond theme, the Moby remix.
Oh, I remixed Moby's James Bond theme. Moby wrote the theme, or was Moby's version of the James Bond theme, and I then remixed his version. But that all came out on an album release of it. Yeah.
Man. I mean, and as someone who's a complete sort of novice in releasing records, because I've never actually done it, how do those remixes come about, and what are the sort of, do you have conversations with the artists about what you're going to do?
Sometimes it's just it's all record company stuff. Sometimes it's literally your mate who gives you a call and says, "Do you want to remix my track, mate?" You know, right? I mean, with like Depeche Mode, I never got to speak to Depeche Mode, which is a damn shame because I would have loved, of course. But that didn't happen. I just got a phone call from the publisher saying, "Look, we're doing remixes of this track for Depeche Mode. Are you interested? We'd really like you to do a version." I was like, "Well, hell yeah, of course I'm going to fucking remix Depeche Mode." I'd rather choose a couple of songs myself that I can remix, but I'll remix anything by Depeche Mode, of course. Yeah, and like with Tori Amos, I didn't get to meet or speak with Tori. I just got literally the phone call, basically saying, "Look, you and Carl Craig, I think Carl Craig did a version as well, a remix as well." It was Carl Craig and Armand Van Helden. Armand Van Helden was a different song. But anyway, whatever. Again, was a phone call. But then certain people, obviously the people I know, people when I remix stuff of Dave Angel or Cisco stuff, it's a phone call, and it's like Cisco saying, "Look, hey, do you want to do this?" But like most of the big bands, it was just literally the publishers that do it. But it was always, I've never, apart from one time, asked anybody, "Can I remix you?" It's always the other way. You always get asked to do a remix. I asked somebody once, because it was one of my all-time favorite tunes when I was like 13 or 14. It's like a Canadian band called Rational Youth.
Wow.
Sort of a Canadian Kraftwerk kind of thing, like back in the 70s and 80s. And they had this song called Le Meilleur des Mondes, the best of the worlds. And it was one of those things that inspired me when I think I was about 13 or 14 to really get into the synth stuff, to really start doing it myself. I was always, like I said, faffing with my organs and stuff like that, but really to start taking it very seriously, I think that band really gave me that extra push. And then years later, when internet came about and stuff like that, I found a website of them, and there was an email link. So I just clicked the link and I said, "Hi guys, my name's CJ, this is blah, blah, blah. I've just got to say a massive thank you for all the work and inspiring me to do this and that." And then they emailed me straight back saying, "CJ, you know us? we're huge fans, man." And I'm like, "What, you know me? No, this is getting weird." And I said, "Look," I said, "seriously, that tune, Le Meilleur des Mondes, just like meant everything to me." I said, I'd love to remix it. And I said, "Oh, well, we'd be honored." So yeah, did it.
Incredible, man. Incredible. It's nice when you get that sort of spark to like, I think I can do something with that. Like, that's incredible, man. And I guess really...
the thing is though, a lot of the remixes that I did weren't always appreciated by the people I did them for, because I would generally get asked to do a remix and they would want me to do a dance floor version. Right. But I only do dance floor version when I think it feels like something needs that, or something sounds like the Tori Amos. I didn't do a dance floor version. I did what sounded good to me. Same with Depeche Mode. The Prodigy, I did do a dance floor version because that track just screams dance floor. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that makes sense. But not always, and oftentimes, I mean, not that people were annoyed or whatever, but I would get certain feedback from certain record labels saying, "Oh, could you not make it a bit more this, a bit more that, a bit more dancing?" And I said, "Well, look," I said, "I could do it. I could give it a bash, but I really like what's happening. Oh, we'll play it to the band. Oh, it's all right. We'll put it out like this." And then it would get a B-side, and the Carl Craig version would get an A-side, because that was a dance floor thing, and that's what they wanted in the first place, if you see what I mean. I mean, not that that was a big deal, but I felt that sometimes, I know Orbital weren't too keen on the remix I did for them, because they didn't think it was dancey enough or whatever. But I just really like that remix. You know, I just really like the feel I got out of it. That's what I wanted to hear. I would fucking dance myself apeshit to that, but I mean, it's maybe not everybody, but there you go.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to hear the sort of the what goes on behind the scenes, because mostly just
it's mainly what goes on in my head, basically, which might all just be bollocks, so don't take it all too seriously.
Yeah, I think we're all guilty of that, aren't we? We all tell ourselves mad stories that are totally irrational. I do it all the time. Yeah, and I mean, going into your own stuff, sort of moving on from the remixes, 5 albums you've released.
Well, yeah, as CJ
Bolland.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So some huge tracks on there, like on those albums.
There's a couple.
I don't know how to pronounce
Camargue.
How do you pronounce?
Well, in English you would say Camargue. It's actually pronounced Camargue, because it's a place in the south of France.
Right. Wow.
And it's a place in the south of France where I went skinny dipping.
Right.
And skinny windsurfing.
Wow.
That's a bold move. Then girlfriend. So I had a good time there, basically. And I came back home and randomly wrote that tune that had nothing to do with that place, but thought it felt like that vibe that I had there. Just felt there was something nice about it, that I connected to that area. It's a nice place. Go check it out. Camargue.
I will, man. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of one of the most heralded R&S releases of all time, isn't it? I looked at like a top 10 list of R&S records, and I think it's number 3 in the all time.
What?
But yeah, The Prophet. Who's above you? Good question. I think, off the top of my head, I
Outland of the Vamp's got to be up there.
I would Plastic Dreams. Plastic Dreams, number 2.
Plastic Dreams. Joey Beltram, Energy Flash.
Yeah, Joey Beltram, Energy Flash.
Aphex Didgeridoo. Come on, man. Oh, man. I'm just remembering how many seriously classic tunes were on R&S. It's insane.
Yeah, well, I was looking at you did an Essential mix in 1994, I think.
Yep.
And I was just looking at the track list on that, like just dribbling at like all the artists, including your own work that's in there. You know, Aphex Twin, Orbital, RAC as well. RAC, who's now, I mean, that guy's still making. I think he's won some Grammys, hasn't he? RAC now. Luke Slater, Plastic Man, Jones and Stevenson, The First Rebirth. Just so many great records, man.
Yeah.
Love your Essential mix from '94. I just have to say that. I've listened to it for years.
I'll have to listen to that back, actually. I don't remember it. I'll have to give that a listen.
Yeah, Tower of Naphtali.
Naphtali, yeah. Well, that's the last album I did for R&S. That was Electronic Highway. That was the last one I did for R&S. And I don't know how that came about, but R&S was slightly changing its mood. And he was getting very into breakbeats and more drum and bassy vibe about him. He was signing a lot of the UK stuff at the time, and also he had his label Apollo, which was an ambient label, which was huge. There was a lot of really great stuff on there that I really liked, and I was just inspired by a lot of the Apollo stuff, but at the same time, all this breakbeat stuff that was going on, and that's just that album, Electronic Highway, really became sort of a crossover between those styles. Not at all very dance floor worthy, nothing really on that album that really got played much out in clubs, but it was just one of those that I really enjoyed working on. Just that I really, really had a good time, and I still have a good time. It's probably one of my albums that I listen back the most myself.
Yeah, I love it too, man. When you mentioned your friend Dave Morley was into like ambient stuff, I wonder whether was he involved with any of that album?
I think actually, yeah, he was on one of the tracks. Definitely, I think he was. Yeah, but I mean, it involved. He was definitely also. I was definitely inspired by all along the way, and also Geir Jensen. What was his Biosphere? The Norwegian guy who lives he's like 400 kilometers above the North Pole Circle, so he has 6 months of darkness every year. Can you imagine?
Is he?
Yeah. He's what? They're from Tromsø, which is literally it's 400 kilometers above the North Pole Circle. I've been there once, and it's beautiful, but it's like. Now that's properly. I mean, I'm from the north. I'm from Stockton. I'm from Teesside, but that's not the north. Tromsø is the north. That's like 3,000 miles further. Yeah, and like I said, I was there in the summertime, so it was just day. It was just day all the time. The sun doesn't go down. But can you imagine 6 months of darkness? That must be mental. And also, even in the 6 months of light, it's like mostly still white around you, because there's mountain ranges. They're all white all year round. But even just at ground level, I think there's only like 2 or 3 months where it's literally not frozen over. So it's like living in the North Alaska, something like that. So
like living on the moon or something.
Well, it's not pretty much. So that you totally understand his music when you go and see where he actually lives and writes it. And it's like, I mean, it's the same like the first time I landed in Miami, I suddenly totally understood rap and R&B and stuff happening. I saw, like, if I lived there and I was sat by that blue beach, by that blue water on the white beach by that blue water, I'd be writing that shit as well. I wouldn't be writing that dark fucking evil acid stuff. What's that all about? I only write that because I live in a country where it rains every day and it's always bloody cold.
Yeah, and what sort of places around the world that you've been to do you like? Like what sort of in places?
Well, I've been
inspire you.
Apart from the being on the way on the airplanes bit that I didn't like as much as I already told you, but I do love traveling and being places. I've always loved being in the USA, or being a big fan of traveling around America. But my most favorite place has always been Australia, largely because of the people and one person in particular, Richard McNeil, who pretty much runs the festival scene there now, the dance festival scene. But he started with small venues. He started doing parties in small clubs. He started booking me and literally booked me every single year from about the middle of December till the end of February. And he would tour me all around Australia and New Zealand and whatever. And I just skip winters. I'd just be there. and every year his events got bigger and bigger up to a point. And then after, even like at the end of the 90s, I sort of took a substantial break from techno and formed a band with a Belgian mate of mine. We started a band, singer-songwriting stuff, and I just literally walked away from techno, but still the guy in Australia would book me on his massive big techno events. And I just kept going back. So Australia's, well, literally, the only reason I never actually decided to stay there and just live there is because it's so bloody far away. I'd have to take that long ass flight all the time to come and see me mum and dad or my family over here. And I just thought, I just can't hack that flight, doing that like 2 or 3 times, well, even a year, let alone several times a month or whatever. That's just too big. So
it's a long way, yeah.
It's bloody miles away. But it's, once you're there, it's brilliant.
What was that side project? What was the name of that band that you
Magnus.
had then?
Magnus. We did that from 2000 onwards till 2000. We actually quit that band in 2018. And it's mainly me and a guy called Tom Barman. And Tom Barman is also the lead singer and songwriter of the band Deus. Now, Deus is Belgium's probably biggest rock band.
Really? Wow.
Well, alternative rock band, let's say. But they're huge. They're huge. They do world tours all the time. And he is into, well, electro as much as his rock music. And he was DJing one night at this event that had several locations. It was like an event that was spread over 5 locations, and I was playing in one, and he was playing somewhere else. And one of my mates said, "Hey, when you finish, shall we go and see Tom Barman DJ?" And I said, "Tom Barman, the rock guy, the singer-songwriter? He's DJing?" Oh no, that's going to be horrible. Oh no, well, let's just go and check it out. Just go for a laugh. And we went down, and he was playing really funky, really wicked, not techno, but electro, like really bouncy stuff. And I was like, God, this is really good. What the hell? Couldn't mix to save his life, but it was brilliant music. So I was really having a good time, really boogieing down to this guy. I thought, I'll go and introduce myself when he's finished. But then suddenly he dropped one of my tunes, played one of my records. But It Ain't Gonna Be Me, which is like a breakbeat thing I did for Pete Tong back in the day on FFRR records. And he played that, so I went straight up and introduced myself. And he said, "Oh, brilliant! Oh, this is you! Oh, I love this tune. Hey, give us your phone number. I've got to give you a call. I want to ask you something. I want to hang out." And he called me the next day and he said, basically, look, I've been thinking about it for over a year now. I want to do something in your field. I want to do something with electro, but it's still song based, but just, with somebody out of your scope, out of your field. And he said, can we meet up? And I said, well, I've got a studio, come and hang out. We'll have a chat about it. And then he did. And I said, look, you've come at a really good time because I'm actually sick to death of I'm sitting in my studio on my own, writing techno tunes. This is really cool. And then before I knew it, he was inviting people in, guitar players, piano players, violin players, everything. And then suddenly my eyes opened up to this whole new level of working in the studio with actual musicians, apart from programming everything on your own and just sitting there on your own. So this was a whole new thing, and I just got into it. I'll send you some clips, send you some stuff.
I would love to hear it. Yeah, I would love to. It's just such a sort of quite an inspiring connection that you sort of randomly went to go and see him, and then he played one of your tracks, and then he was looking for an electronic producer, and he happened to find CJ Bolland.
It was all right time, right place, and it clicked. I mean, we still work together now because since then I've also been producing his rock band, and that's why I didn't get back till 6:30 today, because I'm in the studio with him working on days, working on his new album. So
fantastic, man. You mentioned It Ain't Gonna Be Me there, which that was a huge record. You said Pete Tong, you did that for Pete Tong.
Oh, basically, what happened was after RNS in 95/96, I sort of followed Cisco Ferreira, who had already signed to a UK label called Internal. And Internal was a sub-label of FFRR Records, which was pretty much Pete Tong's label. But when I signed to Internal was run by two guys, Ben and Christian, who were really into the techno, really knew what was going on, and really loved what we were doing. Like I said, they signed the Advent Cisco Ferreira, they signed Drum Club, they signed a couple other techno bands, and Orbital. Obviously, Orbital was on there, wasn't it?
Orbital, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I did my album for them, which had the Prophet on there. The Sugar, we had a massive hit, a complete fluke hit with Sugary Sweeter, which I didn't see coming. I wasn't even going to play them the tune. It was
really?
Originally it was an instrumental thing. It was me having some fun with some breakbeats, and it was instrumental. And then a friend of mine came around to the studio, Nicky, who I don't know if you know the band Berghain, which is a big Belgian rave band from the 90s. He was the lead vocalist of Berghain. A good friend of mine popped by the studio. I said, what are you doing? What are you working on? I said, I played some of the techno. I played this instrumental breakbeat tune. And she said, oh, that's brilliant. Why don't I do something on that? And I said, what do you mean do something on that? I said, well, I'll do some lyrics to it. And I said, well, all right then. Where's your microphone? I said, well, I haven't got a microphone. I've never needed one. I said, well, what can we do then? I said, why don't we plug the headphones into the sampler? The headphones, I mean, we can work bi-directional. We can use them as a microphone. So we did.
Genius idea.
Well, it was the only idea. It was either that or I should, never mind, then we won't bother. So we recorded them into the sampler, and then it just basically, it's all in one take, and it's just that song. And I like I said, I just thought, they're not going to like this. They're not going to know what this is not what they signed me for. And he said, well, that's all, I like all this techno stuff. You got anything else going on? Anything more single? And I said, well, not really. I said, I have got this one song with some lyrics on it. Oh, let's hear it. And he said, you're shitting us, aren't you? That's brilliant. We totally want to put this out as a single. And then they had Armand Van Helden remix it. And then it just went off. I mean, I didn't know. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I was used to being in techno charts and stuff like that, and I knew how to please a techno crowd on the dance floor, but I'd never been dreamt I'd be anywhere near anything like the charts, like the top 40, top of the pops, and things like that. And it even went Billboard #1 in the Billboard dance chart in the States. I mean, that was just insane. So that all, that sort of changed the whole momentum in a big way. And then what happened, and then it all got a bit weird, of course, it was all too good to be true. Ben and Christian from Internal got a better offer somewhere else, left. Internal Records just got dissolved, and the mothership FFRR sucked up Orbital and myself. Dropped Cisco because it was too underground for FFRR. Dropped the drum because they were too underground for FFRR. But I just had a hit, and Orbital had some hits. So we were suddenly signed to FFRR Records, and suddenly I was answering to Pete Tong and not to Ben and Christian. which
Right, wow.
which is a nice bloke. That's all fine. We got on, but obviously we have a slightly different view on the music. That, you know, he was wanting to put out more sugary, sweeter singles, and I wasn't writing them because it was just a one-off thing. I can't force myself to write a pop tune. I wouldn't even know how. It's just if a hit is just like a fluke. It's just coincidence. So I wrote a next album for Pete Tong. And he said, CJ, look, I really like the stuff, but I don't hear any singles on it. And without a single, we can't really put it out. And I said, well, let me go then. He said, well, we can't do that either because we've signed a contract and we've given you a shitload of cash. So what we need basically is you to go back to the studio and write us some hit singles. And I was like, shit, how the fuck do you do that? I was like, what the hell?
That's what everybody would think in that situation.
Well, exactly. I mean, some people do it naturally. And for me, naturally is banging dark underground stuff. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely, yeah. Sort of. That's the one thing that's sort of, it's a bit of a dichotomy, because like you were known and as like, you know, making really underground stuff, and like, you know, Aphex Twin was playing your records out, and you know everyone was playing your tunes. They're huge in the underground. Like it wasn't really mainstream stuff. You know, you really had the respect to the underground. And yeah, I love that. I mean, you're right in saying like the Sugar Is Sweeter has like that pop, a pop sort of.
But I mean, it was all new to me as well, and it was fun to do, and I still love the track. I mean, I didn't do anything.
Great track.
It's just I wasn't ready for that level of success, and especially the responsibilities that come with it. Like now you have to write us more like hit tunes, and I was like, well, guys, just please, I just wanted to go back to Renard. I was like, just let me go home. I don't want to do this anymore. And then it all got stuck and lost. And Pete was adamant. He said, look, I think you've got the melody in you. Just bring it out. And he can, you know, he was just hoping that I was going to come back with something else. And I basically said, look, Pete, I've got this one tune, which was It Ain't Gonna Be Me. I said that's as poppy and as thing as I can imagine. This is as far as I can go with it. So he put that out, and then he said, "Look, all right, well, we'll leave it at that, and then we'll let you go." But in the meantime, a year and a half or 2 years had gone past, and I'd lost all my momentum, and I just felt a bit lost. And that's when I met this Tom Barman guy, this Deus guy, and that's when I just thought, oh, you know what? I'll just leave this techno lark for a while, and I'll try something else. And I just got caught up in something completely different. Also, techno itself was in a bit of a weird stage at that moment in time. Everything went a bit minimal, and I mean, as good as some minimal is, it wasn't really my thing, especially not to write, and also not for DJing so much. So it was a good time to meet Tommy and to get into a whole different swing of things. And then, well, as years went by, the scene changed again. Everything went very electro pop, and then it swung back on itself, and then it went to badass fucking proper techno again. And now, for the last 5 or 6 years, techno have been the best years ever. They're incredible.
Oh wow!
I think it's insane. It's insane, the good music that's coming out. Not the mainstream scene, not the shit that they're playing on Radio 1 probably or whatever. I mean, nothing against Radio 1, but I mean, not the stuff that's rubbed into your faces every day, not what we call the business techno, but the proper underground scene is bigger than ever, and it's better than ever. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Nice, man. Really Can you share some, who's inspiring you right now? What sort of artist?
Blawan for one. Blawan is amazing. Blawan is probably my most favorite, definitely my favorite techno producer at the moment. But loads of people. I mean, Luke Slater still banging it out, still canning it properly.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I can make you a list if I start going through my collection, but off the top of my head, I can't remember all the names and stuff. But just like I literally, like I said, Blawan is mind blowing. That kind of techno. I also, up until like the Corona crisis and stuff, I've got a new residency in Berghain where you do 4-hour sets of all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? Only just like Blawan mixed with dirty, weird electro stuff and just the hardest shit you can find with the grooviest, funkiest, weirdest shit. Old school, new school, anything, it just doesn't matter. I don't know if you've ever been to Berghain.
I haven't, no. A 4-hour set just sounds like the most exciting thing to do as a DJ, to be able to really have a journey within what you're doing. What's the club like? I mean, what's it like playing there?
It's insane. It's literally insane. For one, the sound system is just, scary. It's when you first walk in, the first 10 minutes, you think, I don't know if I can handle this. It's just too much. It's too big. I mean, there's big sound systems on festivals, but the volume isn't quite the same. There's sound systems with massive amounts of bass all over the planet, but the setup is never quite as perfect or as calibrated as Berghain. Is every single thing is totally spot on. There's nothing in the wrong place frequency-wise, and it gets recalibrated every single night for every single event. They completely spend 2 or 3 hours resetting every single bit of that sound system every single day, my friend. I'm not making this up. Then there's that. Then secondly, the crowd. You must know that Berghain's legendary about refusing entrance, but they don't refuse you because you look well, let me put it like this. Why do they refuse you? They refuse you because you don't look as though you're going to be a plus to the party. That's all it is. If you don't look as though Berghain is going to be better off with you, then they're not going to let you in. That's all it is. That's all it is. So being very young is not a plus, because of the very young people with their mobile phones taking pictures outside, the doorman spotted them a mile away. That's not what we want in Berghain. Well, for a start, you're not allowed to take pictures in Berghain.
It sounds like heaven.
It's insane. But so it's not the easiest place in the world to get in. You have to be, basically, if you really, really want to be there, you're going to look like you really want to be there, and you'll get in. You'll get in. And then once you're inside, anything goes. Anything goes. There's no rules. The only rule is don't piss anybody off. Don't get your mobile phone out of your pocket. Don't start filming anything. But apart from that, anything goes. You want to be naked. You want to start. People shagging in the corner. Just fucking everything's going on. Anyway, it's not meant for that. That's not the main thing. But anything goes once you're inside. So as you can imagine, then this massive sound system. All the best DJs you can imagine from the world. Every single Friday and Saturday night, it's just like the most insane lineups. Starts midnight and on the Friday night and ends Monday afternoon at 12 o'clock.
Wow!
All in one go. It doesn't stop, and it's that's what can I say? You have to at least have been there once. You have to see. And if I'm playing there, I can put you on the guest list. If you're on the guest list, you're as good as it.
Oh, great, man! So, I'd love to, man. Yeah, and
oh man,
what sort of stuff how would you approach playing there? Would that sort of give you a bit more freedom to go a bit out there when you can go
anywhere you want. You can go anywhere you want, which is exactly what I do. It's what, like I said, any vintage you want, any level of power or melody or funkiness or weirdness or abstractness, it's all extremely welcome there. But as best as you can, make it a good experience for the crowd. Don't be experimental for the sake of being experimental. Play experimental stuff because it fits in that set bangingly, and it really is a brilliant tune. So approach it from that point of view. They're just basically, like anyway, want to have a good time and dance, basically. So, but they're open-minded beyond any way you've ever seen.
I do also sort of feel the same thing about the minimal techno and the techno that was really what got me going, like, was sort of the really your stuff, obviously, things like Marco Bailey, Redhead, like tough some Marky G stuff. Obviously Dave Clark, just an absolute godfather. He's hopefully going to be on the show in a few weeks, actually.
Oh, say hi to him. Say hi.
Yeah, he's a legend. And then, but you are too. For me personally, my favourite producers of all time is like you and Liam Howlett. I have to just say that.
Sweet, man. Wow, in the same category as Liam. Nice one. Cheers.
Yeah, for sure. The production and the arrangement of your stuff, it really just felt like nothing else. It just felt like there were a lot of people who were trying to do it, and like you were actually really, really hitting it, especially with I'd love to know where this decision came from. So you had that release Aint Gonna Be Me, which was it ended up being the soundtrack for Human Traffic, which was a huge sort of film, a UK film about the club industry. But on the flip side of that, you had this track Desolate 1. those two tracks they don't correlate. They're both amazing tracks. I just thought like for me personally, flipping over that single, knowing it already and loving it and buying it because I wanted Ain't Gonna Be Me on vinyl, but playing Desolate One was like, I can honestly say it changed my life hearing that track.
Right, nice one. Well, the thing is, that's what I'm saying. There's no rules, and that's why I had a bit of a hard time with Pete Tong, because they like things. Well, it's the commercial market has got to be more directed to a certain audience, and I can't do that. I can only write whatever feels right at that moment in time, and it can be hard as nails, or it can be totally ambient, or it can be punky or whatever, or dirty or evil, or nice and sweet and goody. But it can't be directed at somebody specifically. I can't do that. I don't know how that works. Like all I can do is from inside. So, and what I really like as well is like the angel devil kind of thing, where this really nice melody or this dramatic, melodramatic, nostalgic almost melody in Desolate One, then bounces off that just stupidly hard sound and just noise. You know, it's like literally the devil meets the angel. In actual fact, well, you know, that's what Desolate One actually. That's a Satan song basically. It was supposed to be a follow up to the Prophet. The Prophet is Jesus, and I wanted Desolate One to be the devil. Wow. And I used the sample, like in the Prophet, I used the sample Willem Dafoe from The Last Temptation of Christ, Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ, because his speech has that nice crescendo in it as well that builds up. He's talking to the Jews and about, you think God belongs only to you, he doesn't, and he's building, and it just really felt nice with the tune.
Yeah, definitely. It says, "Come with me," dropped.
But on Desolate One, I used Al Pacino from... I know. I can see your face. Here comes the story. Al Pacino from The Devil's Advocate, who has a moment with Keanu Reeves at the end where he starts explaining, who are you carrying all those bricks for anyway? God, and he starts getting more and more angry and more aggressive in his speech, and it has this exact same crescendo effect. And I thought, perfect. Now I've got the devil doing the same thing. I'm going to call this track The Desolate One, and it's like a follow up to the Prophet, but we weren't allowed to use it.
Oh, the sample.
We weren't allowed to use it. We tried to get it cleared. We tried, and we offered the money, whatever you want, whatever. No, you can't use it. Al doesn't want you to use it. Whereas with Willem Dafoe himself told Martin Scorsese, I like it. Let's do it. So Willem Dafoe is aware of his "come with me" moment.
That's cool, man.
And Al doesn't want me to use it.
That's strange, isn't it? Because Martin Scorsese famously used on Mean Streets. What was the Phil Spector song he used on the soundtrack? He didn't get it cleared. There was about 2 weeks to go on the release of the film when Phil Spector heard that he was using it on Mean Streets.
I don't remember which one it was.
Was it "Be My Baby" maybe, or something like that? But anyway, he's got a bit of double standards if they're not letting you use that sample.
No, man.
Oh no, sorry,
they
let you.
Let
oh,
me.
he let you. Yeah. Sorry. That's what I mean. Double standards. Like, yeah, that's amazing, man. There is like a vocal bit on Desolate One. It's like a bit crushed.
It's that very last bit.
Yeah, I love that.
It is secretly still Al Pacino, but it's muffled. You can tell it's really muffled, and it's the very last bit of the speech where he says, "I'm a fan of man." And that was going to be my "come with me." And I thought, I'm just leaving that bit in. I'm just leaving it in.
You know what, man? When you started explaining that, I was just hoping. I mean, that's so cool, man. That bit crush sample is. It's finally nice to know what that is actually being said there. But it's just such a. It's such an amazing.
But it doesn't make any sense without the rest of the speech. But only I know. But now we know.
Now we know. Oh man, I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to put the sample in the track myself. Where was it? Where did the sample go? What did you do with it?
Well, it's basically it's that whole build up to the "I'm a fan of man" bit. That whole bit there is that whole speech. And if you watch The Devil's Advocate, it starts from the bit where he says to Keanu Reeves, "Who are you carrying all those bricks for? God?" And then from there on, and then I didn't use all of it. I cut some bits out, but it starts from that bit, and then it builds up to "I'm a fan of man." You'll see.
Wow, that's incredible. And like I say, it's one of my all-time favourite tracks, that one. And for me personally, last tune in a set, like every time, just absolutely always killed it, man. Still get shivers listening to that song.
It's funny because when we released it, I didn't actually play it that much.
Really?
When it came out, it was sort of, in a weird way, it was a bit too hard or something. When originally in '95, or no, what was it '96 or '97? I don't remember. It was probably later, yeah, or even '98. But for some reason, in my set when I dropped it, it didn't seem to work back then. But now when I play it, it goes off. They go mental.
Seriously, yeah. I mean, the drop. What were you do? I mean, we sort of touched on it a little bit earlier about having your live setup and doing like a live mix. Because it sounds on that very much like you're riding the faders and there's effects and things happening. Like how would you arrange the tracks live like that?
Well, that's basically what we did. Well, like I said, on that particular one, there was obviously some arrangement in the computer because we wanted the samples in the right place and things like that, and the crescendos to work. You know, that all then things like that were pre-programmed. But then, like I said, we'd have drum machines. Playing from the drum machines, not from the Atari, so we'd be opening drum sounds on the drum machines or unmuting them on the mixing desk as we go along. And then basically I'd usually record like 15 different versions of that song, you know, and then just the best one stands or cut a piece of that one and paste it into that one or whatever. Just I can't remember specifically for that track how we did it, how many versions there were, but that's more or less how we were working most tracks. Would be the bits that we couldn't do on the fly would be in the Atari, and then we just have a whole section before the Atari bit kicked in, or a whole section afterwards where we just kept banging on the machines and just kept let sequences loop and just kept bringing them in and out on the faders, and tweaking up auxiliary effects on the faders in and out. So just things happening live on the fly, and then just cutting the tape and just pasting the bits where we wanted them to be.
Amazing, man. I think that possibly a lot of people who are making tunes in the computer nowadays are sort of missing that tactile connection to the music, you know, the physical arrangement of it.
You see a lot of that coming back now, though. The young generation now are hungry for that. Firstly, they don't want to be drawing lines in Ableton anymore, modulating effects. They want a machine with knobs on. They want to tweak the knobs like we used to do. So as you can see, hardware is all over the place again now. There's more hardware than ever, and a lot of it's really good.
Yeah.
So I'm getting hooked on buying hardware again. I've got to be careful.
Are you? What sort of things do you like using?
Well, firstly, I'm a big fan of Arturia. Also, their software is great. I felt that polybrute, and it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. It's a new. It's actually, I didn't have a polysynth at the moment. I've only got monosynths, and it's the new. I thought I need a good polysynth. I have got some old ones, but nothing that I'm not sick to death of using. So I needed a good new polysynth, and Arturia come up with this polybrute, and not only is it a good polysynth, it's got new features that I've never seen before on an analog synth. It's got a morph button. You can have two sounds. But analog and digital world, this was already possible. But in an analog world, I'm sure this is brand new. You can have one set of parameters, all your knobs facing one way, and then on the second sound, they're all facing somewhere else, and you can morph literally you can have it in steps where you can have it smooth every bit between those two sounds. But on an analog thing, this is actually happening analog. It's actually, I mean, how the fuck they've engineered that? I mean, it's just an incredible machine. Also, one I really like is the Waldorf Iridium. That's a blend of digital and analog all together. But that's just again, it's possibilities on it. It's just amazing.
I gotta say, I don't know the Iridium. Like I've got a Mark 1 Pulse down there, which are great, and the Blofeld I know, and the string.
Yeah.
What's the Iridium?
Iridium is it's the desktop version of the Quantum. The Quantum is their latest flagship keyboard,
right,
which is literally, it's got 3 analog oscillators, it's got 3 digital oscillators, it's got a kernel engine, it's got a granular synth engine and a sampler, all in one, and all completely interchangeable in any which way you want. It all works together off of one huge touchscreen. It's just badass, and it's also got all the knobs as well. It's got all the knobs as well, so you've got knobs and the touchscreen, I mean, the only thing it doesn't do is you can't just talk to it and tell it what to do.
Not yet. Have you seen? There is Aphex Twin did he did like this project with somebody to make a DX7 AI box, and you can play sounds to it, and it'll approximate that sound as a DX7 patch, and it uses AI to. So yeah, I guess it may be in a few years you'll be able to tell the Iridium what to do. And
I haven't seen that yet, but again, I know I'm aware of it. I'm aware that he was involved in something like that. But there's so many things going on. I mean, I'm literally every day I'm at school again, learning all these new technologies all over, and it's just at some point you've just got to say, well, I just want to write some music today. I don't actually want to. I don't want to know what Aphex is doing. I don't want to know what this guy's just invented. I don't want to know the possibilities. I just want to write a song.
Yeah,
get out of my way.
Definitely, man. That's definitely true. There is the gear acquisition syndrome is a big one, and I've suffered from that for sure. I'm definitely quite minimal now compared to what I used to be with gear and synths. What about sort of outboard for you, like effects? Just like, I don't know, like it would be nice to hear. Like what would you use to process stuff? Like what do you enjoy using in the studio to process?
Well, my old classic. So I've got an Eventide H3000D, which is it's literally a classic. It's a classic process. It's a harmonizer, a digital delay harmonizer thing, that had possibilities that nowadays even still some of them are like, wow, you could do that, fucking hell, and you could do that 30 years ago, holy shit. I mean, it was an expensive machine back then. I can't remember what I paid for it. It was a lot of money, but I've still used it to this day. It does really cool stuff. I mean, in all honesty, I do use a lot of software as well, mostly software for effects and compressing and stuff like that. But I do like certain machines that are still swear by. I do actually still like my Drama gates, and I also still like using my distressor compressors. Even though I've got them in software, I've got them like in several times in software by different manufacturers, by Universal Audio. I've got them by Waves and stuff like that. But there's still something about having the hardware machine. You know, there's still something about actually twisting that knob to the right position. And another machine that I really like, which is not something you'd instantly think about getting for a techno studio, but is a Transient Designer. Mm-hmm. It's basically all it is. It's an attack and a decay on any sound that you input through it. It adds extra attack, extra punchiness, a bit like a compressor would, but literally just on the attack. Or it can shorten the decay or stretch it a bit. And again, I've got that in software, but I've got a really nice hardware version, and it just does lovely things. And I think I use it on every single track. Really? At some point.
What sort of things do you do with it, like in context?
I mean, you can use it effecty sort of if you want to stretch something out of it, but that's not. It's generally what I would use it for. I use it a lot on things like snares or on claps and stuff like that, just to get the exactly right length that you want of that clap. I like having a good amount of reverb on a clap, but I don't want it twanging on for ages.
Yeah.
And the gate on it just cuts off, or it's with this Transient Designer, I just get a really nice attack and a really nice length of how I want my clap or my snares to sound. I've used it for lots of other things as well, but that'd be the main feature for it. And I know that's a silly thing, but it once you're used to it, you can't do without it.
Yeah.
I'd be pissed off if I had to mix a track down without it.
Yeah, I think like sometimes utility is like the most useful thing. Especially that sort of stuff that messes with the transients. That's really cool, man. It's not. I guess it's not something that people sort of lord over, but it's ridiculously useful.
Well, in the early days, back in the RNS days, I didn't even use compressors. We had them. RNS had compressors, and I sort of knew what they were for, but I didn't see the need. I just felt it sounded really good. So if it wasn't broke, don't fix it. And it wasn't until literally after 95, 96, that I started seeing value of having a good compression on your kick, and then sidechain compressing certain stuff to get more. Just basically to get more out of the dynamic side and to get more volume where needed. And then also he instantly saw the danger of that, which is what has over the last 10 years, where it's just everything just gets sidechained the fuck out of it. And yeah, well, listen how loud my tune is, but yeah, there's no dynamics in it whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a gain knob on my mixer. I can turn it up a bit louder if the mix is a bit low, but if it's got more fucking balls because it's not being squashed to death, it's going to kick the ass out of your tune. You know what I mean? So
definitely, I've heard people say recently about a lot of hip hop producers that just don't use any compression, and I've sort of been messing around with doing that recently, and it's cool.
I mean, again, yeah,
there's a limitation.
It depends what you need. I mean, now that you've got sidechain equalizers and stuff like that, it's good sidechain equalizing software. We now prefer to sidechaining the compressor, because basically the volume stays the same, but where two sounds conflict in bass, for instance, or if they're somewhere in the 80 or the 90 hertz they're conflicting, when those two sounds are crossing over each other, it takes away that frequency just at that moment in time. But as soon as the other sound disappears, it brings it back. You get really nice results without messing with the overall volume like that. But yeah, there is something to be said about not compressing it, and there is something to be said about compressing it well. You know, it's just both have good sides, and both have possibilities to ruin a track, and both can be great.
One of the tracks that stands out for yours, the production, is the Big Bone mix that you did of Moon Shake It.
Oh yeah. I mean,
the production on that is phenomenal. Like,
yeah, that was. When was that? It was probably like 99 somewhere. Was it? Somewhere? Oh no, I think that was early 2000s.
Yeah, could have been. Yeah, maybe 2000.
And that's why I just got a new mixer. I just got a new mixing desk. I got my first digital mixing desk, would you believe? I got the Sony DMX100.
Oh, wow.
Because I started working with Tommy, because we started working with as a band. And up until then, I was pretty much mostly starting a track and then finishing a track and putting it down to tape. And then when I started working with Tommy, that wasn't possible a lot of the times, because he would come in for a day or two, and then I wouldn't see him for a week. He'd be working on something else, and in those days in between, I'd want to work on something else. So I thought I didn't want to have to start recalling analog mixing desks and stuff like that anymore, taking Polaroids of all the settings and stuff like that. I'll get myself a nice digital mixer. So I shopped around and found one that had a really good sound to it. I didn't want to lose my analog quality. And the Sony thing had had really good EQs. It's still one of the best equalizers. It's got the Sony called the Oxford EQ. Also had onboard compression on it, which was also saved me a lot of money in the long run as well on buying extra compressors. But it had, obviously, because it was a digital desk, total recall. So you could be halfway down your mix, press save, load techno track I was doing yesterday, and while you're working on your other track, you're on your other mix in 1 second flat. Whereas in an analog studio, it takes 3 hours to recall a track.
Exactly. Yeah. And you could never probably get it quite to exactly where you had it.
So I got the mixer and this new mixing desk, and I think that remix I did for Ghost was it
Moon?
Ghost?
I think it's the Moon.
Yeah, Moon. The guy's called DJ Ghost. That's his DJ name. Was one of the first things I did on that desk. So I was really testing it, really trying. How big can I make this kick? How far can I compress it? How far can I push it into the limiter? And so yeah,
great track, man. Love
and
that.
again, one of those tunes that I rarely played out myself when it was first came out. But then after a couple of years. A couple of years later, I sort of rediscovered it and thought I'll drop that in my set again, and it just went off. And I thought, I played it way more recently than I played it when I originally did it. If you see what I'm saying.
Absolutely, I can see it working, man, for sure. It's so ballsy, and it's you play with the decay on like that lead sort of stab sound, and that's just so satisfying to hear, like that sort of opening and closing.
But the thing is as well, that's one of those things. DJ Ghost, a good friend of mine, is a very popular DJ, well, around the world, but especially in Belgium. But he plays the more bonsai, the more kind of like the harder, but also slightly cheesier, let's say, side of techno. Whereas I come from the Jeff Mills, you know, the underground resistance, that kind of thing. But I'm not scared of a good bonsai tune. You know, when it's a proper fucking banging tune like Jones and Stevenson and things like that, I'm just as into it. And with the Ghost tune, the original one was a little bit on the cheesy side, and I thought, well, you know, how can I get the best of both worlds out of this? How can I make it funky, a bit more Detroit sounding, but still give it that Ghost welly, you know, that big boot in the bottom end? So yeah, that became one of those, which oftentimes doesn't work because it becomes neither here nor there. But if you get it just right, the balance just right, you get one of those that you know that you can pretty much fit into.
Well, you absolutely smashed that one. Still, yeah, I love that track. I love the production on it. It's just absolutely phenomenal.
Another little anecdote about that track. There's a voice in it. There's a voice that says, "Get on the floor and shake."
yeah.
Sounds like something I've harmonized with the Eventide or something, but that's actually Ghost. That's beyond DJ Ghost himself. That's just his straight natural voice. He doesn't talk like that, but he manages to perform with his. He got that sound. I was like, what the fuck?
He's got a really gruff voice.
I said, I'm not putting any effects on that, man. That sounds brilliant, just like that.
It does. I mean, yeah, it definitely sounds like some sort of pitch modulation, or it's dark. Honestly, it's really dark. Yeah. Amazing. So you said you were producing for a friend of yours.
Yeah, Tommy. That's Tommy. Well, the guy I had the band Magnus with. I'm now producing for his band Deus.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah. So what are you working on with them?
Basically, it's just at this moment in time, it's just me and him in the studio. What we do is every 2 or 3 weeks they have a jam session with the full band. They come in, I record like whole days worth of them jamming and faffing about and doing stuff. And then we cut little bits and stuff out of it, little good bits out of it, make little loops, make little arrangements. Tommy takes it home, he starts writing new chords, he starts writing lyrics, does stuff like that, he comes back, and we just build from there. And then when things start getting into certain levels of shape, when it starts sounding like a bit of a song, we get the band back in again, and then they play the whole thing again off the back of what we sort of demoed up until that point, and then we get new better versions of it, and that's how pretty much the working process with Deus. It's not always like that, but that's how most songs sort of come to be. Sometimes some days are really good fun and really exciting. Some days are boring. Some days are just insanely hard work because he's got stupid amounts of energy from me. Pretty much everybody I know has got some form of HD or OCD or Tourette's or whatever kind of. We've all got something going on, but I think he's got all of them at once. He smokes and he opens his first can of beer at 10 in the morning, and he's just screaming shit at me all day long. Oh, George, let's try that, let's do that. He knows technically nothing. He can't wait. He doesn't even know how to switch his own laptop on. But he's a musical genius, and he's an insane, and he's the best poet you've ever fucking heard. He's an incredible songwriter. He's really good friends with Nick Cave. They're good pals.
Wow. Sounds like a great guy, man.
Honestly, he's that level as well. He's that level. Incredible. I mean, from Belgium, you have a harder time getting to that level of fame as somebody like Nick Cave, but he's not far off that level of fame, but he's definitely on that level as a songwriter. You should check him out. Deus, with a small D and a capital EUS.
Sounds brilliant, man. I mean, such a diverse range of material that you're able to deliver.
I get bored. You just get bored if it's always the same. That's why, I mean, to my disadvantage in certain ways, but to my advantage, to my mental health. I mean, I just love all the different angles, because Tommy, believe it or not, also has a jazz band which I also produce. So like on certain months it's jazz all day long. The next month it's like we're doing rock music, and then it's an electro pop band, and then it's me doing Berghain techno. And all that together makes me feel good. It doesn't make me very much richer. If I'd been making techno all the time, I would have been more wealthier than I am. But I feel good about it. You know, it's just the right thing to do for me. I literally get bored shitless. I can't imagine writing the same old boring ass business techno tune every day, like some people whose names I won't mention. But I mean, it's just okay, if that works for you, that's fine. But it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I think that's the same for pop stars, isn't it? When they're touring exactly the same set all over the place, you send yourself mad doing that. I really admire producers like you who do move, and like you said at the beginning, you always want to learn, and that's that sort of growth mindset is keeps you creatively active, doesn't it?
The only reason I ever even started making music was because I just wanted to enjoy myself. I loved those sounds, and I just couldn't get enough of them. And it was also a lot harder to come by that kind of music back. I mean, in the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, most record shops were selling the Rolling Stones. They weren't selling like some weird underground band from the States called the Executive Slacks. You had to go and dig for that stuff. And also, I was still very young, didn't have a lot of money. I was whatever pocket money or whatever money I could make washing cars on the side or some stuff like that. You know, and one piece of vinyl was pretty much your whole week's worth of money gone. So it was cheaper to make the music yourself.
Amazing, man.
In the long run. I never thought I was going to be making records. That was never the plan. It was literally just for fulfillment. And then I got that phone call from Renat, and then there you go. So.
Well, you got pretty bloody good at it.
Cheers.
Do you have any like particular mantra or philosophy that you go by?
Not really. I mean, I do at certain moments in time. The mantras seem to change a lot as I go along, and as I learn that old mantra was bollocks. But not really. I just get on with it. Just get, every day is another day, whatever. Like I said, just take it as it comes, and don't be boring. That's it. That's literally it. I mean, I don't tell myself that, because I tend to do that naturally anyway. So I have to tell myself, for once, don't overdo it, because that's my worst vice in the studio is I'm always too curious to see what's around the corner of the next tweak, if you see what I mean. And even though I'm totally loving what I'm hearing, but what if I just put that effect on it? Or what if I just, and then before you know it, you've lost that what you originally point where you're at, and you're somewhere else, and you could just do that forever and never finish the song. So there's got to be a certain point where you go, right, I'm keeping this. This is it. This is good. So that's why when you said do overdo it, that's when I have to tell myself not to overdo it. There's got to be a point where I've got to be happy with it. But like I said, that is pretty much the mantra. Just don't be boring.
Excellent. No, I think that's a good one, man. Well, it's been fantastic to speak to you today, Christian.
Sweet.
Absolutely loved your music, and the music you released in the last few years has also been amazing. What the techno, the acid, electro.
I'll send you some
stuff
with the band stuff and stuff. So it's a whole different thing, but it's nice. I mean, you might like it, you might not, but I think you might be interested in it. I'll send you some links.
I would love it. Yeah, anything you recommend. The techno artists from the modern world. Anything at all, man. Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Our only regret with the band was that it was really hard when we tried to tour it around Europe. It was really hard to get the interest. In Belgium, we were a massive success. We had like a whole bunch of #1 singles, but Belgium's tiny. Belgium, I mean, being #1 in the charts is just enough to pay the rent, basically. But you don't get very far with it. So it's basically be successful in Europe and the rest of the world, or it becomes more of a hobby kind of thing. Now with my techno, that we've managed to do that, but with the Magnus thing, we never really got there. We've really tried, and it never we were massive in Belgium and very good in Holland, but we couldn't break the UK. The UK was just not interested. They just didn't even give us a chance. Just literally wouldn't play it. We did okay in France and in Portugal, but it was all just not enough to get it going. It's just hard. It's a hard thing coming from such a small country as Belgium to be taken serious anyway. It's really, that's why I was lucky with techno that there was no face to it. There was no nationality to it originally. It was just instrumental music, and it could be anywhere, anything. And there's no nationality directly linked to it originally. I'm saying that one.
Exactly.
So
that's true. I spoke to Jake McNeil, who's the manager of Mauro Picotto, for like 9 years or something. And we talked about that time, and it was like those electronic music scenes were like it wasn't really about your nation. It wasn't really about where you're from. It was about like the scene and the music, wasn't it?
Totally.
Great, man. Well, I'd love to hear the new stuff you're working on. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, man.
Cheers, man. Nice one. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Well, I still can't believe I actually had a conversation with CJ Bolland after idolising him really as a producer for many years. You can probably hear that in the interview. It's just amazing what can happen, you know, it really is amazing. He is a phenomenal producer. If you go and listen to Desolate 1 or, you know, Camargue, tracks we talked about, his Big Bone mix, my God, they really knock your socks off. And I think for people who know him, they know the influence that he had and just how great he is as a producer. Okay, that's it for this week. Don't know how we're going to follow that up, but I think we're going to do it. Every week in May we have an episode coming out, so next week, in only 7 days, we've got Plugin Guru on the show, who's a man who's grown up with synths his whole life and has turned it into a profession, and he has his own software, which is really, really, really cool. Please support the podcast if you can. If you don't want to donate, you can just share it around a bit, or you can buy the things I sell, my Max for Live devices, my music hardware that I make. Anything you can do which will support me will help also to support the podcast. Thank you very much once again for listening. I don't know how this thing happened, but it's turning into something amazing, and I thank you for your support and listening. I'm midierror, and I will speak to you in 1 week's time.